go-getters, this revolution is happening right under the noses of Wall Street giants who are scrambling to catch up. But there's something darker brewing beneath this success story that nobody wants to talk about. So today I'll be pulling back the curtain on Africa's fintech explosion. Getting when you discover something incredible that everyone else missed. That's exactly what's happening right now across Africa. While the world was busy looking elsewhere, an entire continent figured out how to leapfrog traditional banking and create financial systems that work for real people. If you don't know, right now we are actually witnessing the birth of financial independence for 1.4 billion people. And the truth is, there are some powerful forces that want this revolution to fail. So if you stick around to the end, you are definitely going to get hold of it.
Audio Jungle.
$37.8 trillion. That's how much the United States owes as of 2025, more money than the value of every company listed on the New York Stock Exchange combined. For decades, the US dollar has been the backbone of global trade, the world's default currency. But cracks are beginning to show. Across the Atlantic, a quiet revolution is underway. Not in Beijing, not in Moscow, but in Africa. A continent once dependent on imports and Western aid is now designing a new financial system, one that could rewrite the rules of global trade. This is the story of how America's debt crisis helped give birth to Africa's new financial empire, starting with a revolution in food. The U.S. national debt has been growing for decades, but by 2025, it hit an unprecedented $37.8 trillion. Analysts say the cost of servicing this debt alone, paying just the interest, has reached nearly $1.2 trillion per year. That's more than the U.S. spends on defense or education. As the dollar weakens, confidence in its stability as the world's reserve currency is being tested. Countries that once depended on the dollar for food imports and commodities are now looking elsewhere, and that's where Africa steps in. The global economy is undergoing quiet fragmentation. Regional blocs are forming their own systems. Africa's experiment is one of the most significant. For Africa, this moment is not just about economics, it's about independence. The old system made it difficult for African countries to trade with one another. Now, with digital tools, sovereign currencies, and new partnerships, the continent is building its own financial scaffolding. It began as a simple idea: why trade African food through Western currencies when Africa grows and eats its own? In early 2025, 32 African nations joined the Pan-African Food Trade Initiative, a digital clearinghouse that allows food and agricultural products to be exchanged using local or continental currencies. No dollars, no euros, just African value for African goods. The system operates under the African Continental Free Trade Area (AfCFTA) and uses a blockchain-secured network known as the Afrex Digital Settlement System (ADS), created by the African Export-Import Bank Afreximbank. For the first time in history, farmers in Kenya can sell grain to Ghana without converting into US dollars. Traders in Nigeria can buy cocoa from Ivory Coast using the ECO, a regional currency. It's a quiet revolution, but one with massive implications. The AfCFTA is not just trade policy, it's continental transformation. It will move Africa from raw exports to value creation. Within 6 months, food trade volumes across African borders grew by 40%. Local farmers gained better prices, and nations that once imported billions in processed food began producing their own. So, how does America's debt crisis fit into this? The truth is, the U.S. financial system's instability triggered a chain reaction. As the Federal Reserve printed more money to cover interest costs, inflation spread globally. African importers, paying in dollars, saw costs skyrocket. Wheat from Europe, rice from Asia, fertilizer from America, everything doubled in price. The crisis became an opportunity. African leaders realized that dependence on external currencies meant dependence on external politics. When the US sneezes, Africa's economies catch a cold. But this time, Africa decided to build immunity. The dollar is strong, but it's not eternal. We're building a financial immune system for Africa. As America's debt burden grew, global confidence in US treasuries declined. Investors turned to emerging markets, and for the first time, Africa was ready to receive them. Sovereign wealth funds from Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa poured billions into food logistics, railways, and blockchain trade infrastructure. At the center of this transformation is the African Food Exchange AFX, headquartered in Addis Ababa. Think of it as the Wall Street of African agriculture. Here, commodities like maize, cassava, palm oil, and coffee are traded digitally, with prices set by African demand, not global speculation. The platform uses a unified trade currency known as the Africoin, pegged to a basket of African currencies and agricultural indices. Within months of launch, AFX processed $60 billion in trade volume, attracting participation from China, India, Brazil, and the UAE, all eager to diversify away from the dollar. Africa's financial rise is not about isolation, it's about integration. We are building systems that speak our economic language. The results are profound. Inflation is stabilizing. Intra-African trade is up 70% since 2024. Local manufacturing is accelerating as regional demand replaces imports. The debt crisis in America inadvertently gave Africa a window to rise. The reaction in Western capitals has been cautious, even uneasy. As the dollar's influence shrinks in African trade, U.S. financial institutions are losing visibility into one of the world's fastest-growing markets. What Africa is doing is historic. It's like watching the birth of the euro, but decentralized, digital, and pan-continental. The European Union and United States have since proposed new partnerships, not aid packages, but equity collaborations, in hopes of retaining access to Africa's expanding food markets. Meanwhile, BRICS nations, particularly China and India, have begun transacting directly in local African currencies, bypassing the dollar entirely. The International Monetary Fund calls it a multipolar monetary shift, but to many Africans, it's simply justice delayed, and finally delivered. What began as a food trade experiment is now expanding into energy, technology, and banking. The African Financial Integration Framework AFIF, launched in late 2025, connects national payment systems from 41 countries, enabling instant cross-border transactions. The plan, to make Africa the most interconnected financial region in the developing world, with over 1.4 billion consumers and a combined GDP nearing $4 trillion, Africa is now attracting record foreign direct investment, not for raw exports, but for processing, fintech, and logistics. Africa is not waiting for permission, it's writing its own economic rulebook, and the world is paying attention. At the same time, agricultural innovation is booming. From vertical farming in Rwanda to drone-based irrigation in Egypt, African agritech startups are raising billions, many funded through AFX tokenized assets. Not everyone is convinced. Some critics warn that Africa's shift away from the dollar could expose weaker economies to volatility. Others worrying about cybersecurity and corruption risks in digital payment systems. Innovation must be matched by regulation. Without accountability, Africa's new empire could face the same pitfalls as the old system. Yet, even skeptics admit, the trajectory is clear. Africa's financial awakening is not a dream. It's data. Cross-border trade is surging. Dollar usage in African trade settlements dropped by 35% in just 18 months. The empire is real and grown. America's $37.8 trillion debt is more than a financial number. It's a symbol of a shifting world. For decades, global wealth flowed north. Now, it's starting to flow south. Africa, once defined by dependence, is redefining power through food, finance, and innovation. The empire being built today, in colonial, it's cooperative. And its foundation, in gold or oil, it's food, the one resource that truly sustains humanity. The world's richest nation is drowning in debt. The world's youngest continent is rising in strength. And as the balance shifts, one thing is clear: Africa is no longer the future. Africa is the now.